welcome back to Let's Play Mega Man X2. Now, this time around, you'll notice that upon starting the stages, you'll see some of the X-Hunters on the map, and they decide to occupy themselves in various stages. I'm going to Overdrive Ostrich's stage because, well, for starters, he has a useful upgrade that I can get in it. It is the leg module, and also it has one of the X-Hunters in it. And I guess this is a good time as any to demo the X-Hunters. Now, the X-Hunters hide themselves in hidden mini-boss rooms, and there's mini-boss rooms in every single one of the stages. X-Hunters will only appear in stages that you haven't cleared yet. Now, this one is Violen, and Violen is probably the most irritating of them all. Violen's irritating because basically defeating him pretty much depends on what day of the week it is. Really, Violen has no set pattern, and his attacks are really damaging. This can be particularly annoying because sometimes his fights will be no sweat at all and they'll just go really smoothly. Other times he decides to do the most annoying things possible and be a complete pain in the ass. This fight ended up being somewhere between the two. He managed to do some things benign enough that I was able to beat him, but he still had his bouts of dickery. Probably the most annoying thing he does is jumping over your shots. I was really worried I wasn't going to make it, but I managed to beat him with one bit of health left. Now, a thing to know about the X-Hunters: if you clear a stage with an X-Hunter in it and you don't defeat them, they disappear forever, and you cannot get the Zero's part from them. As you saw there, I got Zero's chest part from Violen. I actually read a pretty good point. Why the hell do these guys actually give X Zero's parts? Wouldn't it just be easier to lie to him about having them, or give him decoy parts? But whatever. I guess they know what they're doing. But yes, if you clear a stage with an X-Hunter in it and you don't defeat the X-Hunter, that X-Hunter will vanish for good. And you won't see them again until the end of the game, where you have a rematch fight with them. And at that point, you don't get Zero's parts. Here's a little land chaser segment. If you manage to do this really well, you can get to the end of the stage to get a heart upgrade, but it's almost impossible to do with pure human reflexes. It is doable, it's just not easy. There's an alternate way of getting it with different powers. It requires your death, but it's worth it, I guess. Anyways, about the X-Hunters. Ah, fuck, I forgot what I was gonna say. Oh, yes, I do plan on fighting all the X-Hunters before we go to the final stages, but I am not going to collect all of Zero's parts. So basically, when I get to the last X-Hunter fight, that means that I'll just reset the game and not get the Zero's part. The reason I don't want to get all the Zero parts is because there's an extra boss fight if you don't get all of them. You don't get any points for guessing who the boss is. Now, here is why we needed Wheelgator's weapon. Not only did it let us reach the X-Hunter, it also let us reach the leg module. And this gives us the almighty air dash. Well, maybe not almighty, but it is very useful. Certainly would have been handy to have in X1. Just a note, I did have one take where I almost fell and died here because I thought the scene was automatic, but nope. You have to jump up onto there, and once you do, due to error with porting this game onto the X collection, there's a very loud and annoying sound when X goes to destroy that rocket. That aside, here is Overdrive Ostrich. This guy isn't particularly difficult, it's just he's kind of annoying because he's practically the only boss that will take advantage of the fact that just simply running into X will do the most damage to him. At least he's the only boss I can think of off the top of my head who takes distinct advantage of this without having a specific attack dedicated to it. It really just amounts to him running into you. He's also notable in that he's the only Mega Man X boss I've seen that will go into the background to try and attack you, which is one of the more notable things about him. Now, that jumping attack that he does is probably the most annoying attack in his arsenal. Because if you are not on lower ground than he is, that will hit you. So if you're on higher ground, your best bets are to dash to the left and hopefully get to a lower bit of ground so he can jump over you. Like that. Occasionally I panic and he just ends up hitting me, but otherwise I can usually dodge that. It actually took me an embarrassingly long amount of time to figure out how to reliably dodge his Sonic Slicer from the air attack. Just dash underneath him. You'll usually end up in a place where the slicers won't hit you. That was the one exception, but as you saw, I usually wasn't in the way. Anywho, for defeating Overdrive Ostrich, as soon as the level decides to finish itself, you get his Sonic Slicer. Sort of like Boomer Kuwanger's weapon, except it fires horizontally, and it had, well, what I mean by that is it doesn't really move like vertically at all, like it doesn't go up or down, and it doesn't retrieve items, so it's a purely attacking thing. I hardly ever use it except for the bosses it's useful against. Now, we're going to Flame Stag next, and there isn't an X-Hunter in this level. If you're curious, the X-Hunters just decide to locate themselves in random levels. Now, for the first secret of this area, get this giant Stag Beetle robot. See what they did there, Stag Beetle? And you can use it as a platform to get to this sub-tank. Pretty nice. Now, there is another secret here that you can get, but while it is possible to not die getting it, it's almost guaranteed you will, unless you are ridiculously fast climbing up this shaft. I am neither of these things because I am terrible at memorizing how the shaft goes, and also my controller is kind of dying on me and the buttons don't work that well anymore. I know it's kind of a lame excuse to blame things on your controller, but I think my PS2 controller is starting to give out. Or maybe I really am just that terrible. Either way. Now, here comes another annoying shaft section. There's these gas lines, and while these themselves don't hurt you, these fire squirrels that fly around love to ignite the gas and send fireballs at you. The flying squirrels themselves are kind of little dicks because they fly right into you and are very good at getting in your way when you're trying to ascend this stupid thing. I always have trouble getting the dash jump to work on very narrow patches in the Super Nintendo Mega Man X games. I was not able to get past this guy without getting hit, and then I got hit by the flaming gas line. However, with that ordeal over, we're at the end of the stage already. The stages in X2 are pretty much a lot shorter than the ones in X1. Flame Stag here, I like to call him Sigma Light, since his pattern involves jumping up the walls like Sigma Form 1 from Mega Man X1 enjoyed doing. He's not particularly difficult. I decided to go with all the easy Mavericks first just to get them out of the way so I could give more detail into the tougher ones. Really, all you need to do is just let this guy do his wall jumping business. You'll usually get the best of him. About halfway through the fight, he turns blue, but he really doesn't change up his attack pattern at all. I don't even think his attacks do any more damage. It's just a random detail they threw in. Really, the only trouble I ever had with this fight is when he throws me for a loop and doesn't throw fire or charge at me before he goes back into his wall jumps. And with that, he goes down. Really easy fight. I'll have to come back later to get all the get the hard upgrade. Aside for this run through, I won't go back for upgrades until I've already completed all the Maverick stages, just for a little bit more challenge. But yeah, that's it for this part. Next time we'll hopefully get to take on another X-Hunter and get some more upgrades. Until then.